Hey there, I'm Rachel McAlpine. I was born in 1940, and so I'm learning how to be old. Jo Randerson is my guest today. Like me, Jo lives in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington, in Aotearoa, New Zealand. She's a much-admired playwright, actor, director. In other words, someone whose creative spirit permeates all of her work. I haven't told you the half of it. And her life. Now, Jo has written a book called Secret Art Powers. How creative thinking can achieve radical change. It's not how to be an artist book. Not that sort of book. It's a wild, playful, scary, honest wander through various key components of a creative approach to life. And I found it kind of enchanting. When I read it, I got thinking that her 5 secret art powers were all extremely useful concepts for people like me who are figuring out how to be old. Hello, Jo.
Kia ora, how are you, Rachel?
I'm good.
Good.
We're both a little bit nervous.
It's a kind of a nervous excitement.
Yes, of course. Jo's a theatre person and I'm a little bit a theatre person, so...
We always have nerves when we go on stage.
Well, first question that I ask everybody, if I remember, is how old are you?
Oh, great. I am 51, and sometimes I think I've already turned 52, but 51.
I understand that because I'm 85. I'm not 86 till next February. And I still caught myself saying I was 86 the other day.
Right, it's a bit blurry time.
Perhaps it shows I'm quite enthusiastic about being alive at least and would like to be 86 rather than in my grave.
I think that's right. You're not scared of it. I mean, some people are like, oh God, I'm not 40, I'm 39. And you're like, well, you're pretty much there. Yeah.
True. So you can see I've got a bee in my bonnet. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Right?
Great. We're going to talk about the bee in your bonnet.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's great. I'm excited to talk about it in this context.
Yeah, well, one of the first things that hit me was this concept of softness. Could you talk about that? And I was wondering if perhaps as we get older, we get softer.
Well, I love that question. I think of the opposite too, because sometimes I think we have stereotypes that we get more rigid or harder as we get older. There's always some of both, isn't there? So I was thinking of how maybe physically our skin gets softer.
Oh, God,
doesn't
yes.
it?
Mine's full of holes. Look at that.
Yes.
Every time the cat even jumps on me, the claws make a hole because my skin is very soft. Yes,
well,
that's true.
And that's beautiful. I mean, I just also I'm going through menopause right now, and I went to a talk around that recently, and someone was saying that our shields start to break down around then. They're like, because, a lot of sensitivity comes up around then, and that's beautiful, but also very hard to deal with. We start becoming softer, maybe more in an emotional and psychological way around then. I think we can go either way, because don't you think that some people do get harder as they get older? What do you see as the softness that...
Yes, I do think some people go the other way. I remember one relative's father who had been a hard man all his life, and right at the end he was gentle, he was loving, he was soft. For myself, I think I'm much more tolerant, I'm much more okay with just watching. I'm not having to steer so much, perhaps. Yeah, I think I'm not a sweet little old lady, but I'm probably a bit sweeter than I used to be.
Right. You were a bit fiercer in the other days, were you?
Yeah, in my 30s and 40s, yes, I was.
Well, there's a need for both, aren't there? Like there's and I was thinking about that question because I sometimes think of older folk, of which I am one, but there can be also that incredible, powerful criticality that is there, and but maybe not always offered in a harsh way, like not like stop that, but sort of I think of someone like Rose Beecham, who I've just seen in so many incredible scenarios where it's like the conversation is flowing one way, and she will just, in this maneuver, without opposing anything, will posit a very different point of view and hold that and sway the room. And she hasn't disagreed with anyone. Sometimes, like even now at this age, I think, oh, I've seen this situation happening enough times. I'm not going to sit quietly. I know where this is going.
It's so true. Yes, that happens to me all the time. It happened yesterday.
Right. So that's not a softness in it, but I do hear what you're saying around maybe we get better at approaching those differences more gently. That's making me think of something a psychologist said once to me about, all behaviour makes sense. Actually, like if you track back in someone's life and their experiences, you can always see why that person exploded or why that person has a certain view.
What does that thing you say that if you love anything enough, it will talk to you?
Yes, that's a quote from George Washington Carver. If you love anything enough, it will talk to you.
You know how many people, especially women, especially around about the menopause and beyond, talk about feeling that they have become invisible. For old people, that's very much a thing, I think.
Yeah. I remember when I became a mother, I noticed if I was walking by myself, people would recognise me and say hi, but if I had a pushchair and a toddler, people I knew quite well would not see me. Yes, and since I've turned grey as well, I definitely noticed that invisibility, and not to diminish how painful that can be sometimes, I also love it. Like, I think that I like the anonymity that comes with that sometimes. Because you're not noticed, you then are sort of free to do anything. I like the freedom that you have because no one's watching your every move, and you can actually kind of do anything. I love, sometimes I feel like I can do a stealth attack, because people have already written you off in a way, and they go, there's that older grey lady, of which I am one. I went grey quite early actually, and then people are like, holy heck, what did you see what that old white lady in the corner did? Hopefully not something very embarrassing.
It's an adjustment. Also, you lose your inhibitions to some degree with age. It's one of the bits of the brain that decides it's going to turn off and have a little sleep. That's very scary and very exciting.
Yes, wow. Oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess perhaps the invisibility is easier to speak positively about, but perhaps it's the writing off that is harder, isn't it? Because I do think there is a lot of ageism, and that works in multiple ways. I don't know if you know about this show that we did called Sing It to My Face, where we had different age groups singing to each other. We got people we said, what do you think under 30s are like? What do you think over 60s are like? We did it in very broad, the first, second, third age kind of categories. So we crowdsourced the lyrics from people and made this beautiful, Julian Raphael made a beautiful libretto, and we had those different age groups singing it to each other. It was so amazing and so moving.
Oh, I wish I'd been there.
Yeah. One thing that really struck me there was so much expectation on young people. It was like, you should do this, you should. It was like, wow, a lot of pressure on them. Oh, you guys are the ones. And then definitely some writing off of some of the older generations. Yeah, it was all about trying to find a bit more love between them and try to understand why. What might be hard? That was one of the questions we asked. What might be hard about being that generation? So to try and develop a bit of compassion as well.
What a scheme, yeah. What you're saying just reminds us once again that all the things that we need to learn, or we find ourselves learning as we get older into this scary part of life, no scarier than when you're young. No scarier than when you've got children and debts and mortgages, and it's the same thing that's happening but in a different form. So by the time you're old, the best thing about it is that you're quite good at dealing with stuff like that, because you can look back and say, well, I survived. been young in that really hard time in my 20s and got through the 50s. So I think I'll handle this as well, you know? What do you reckon?
You can think about the resilience and the strength that you have. I think that's a nice way to look at it. I have a friend who says, I'm on my way home to my people. You know, that's it, and that's 10, 20, 30 years away, but like she knows that's where the end of the journey kind of is for her. And I love sort of thinking about it like that, about going home rather than sort of being, I don't know, cut off or whatever, you know.
I don't think like that at all. I can't imagine thinking like that. Yes, I can imagine feeling like that in my 90s.
Yes. What, that you're
on my way home?
On your way home. Yes.
At
that's
the
a thought for later.
Yeah, and I'll save it for later. Put it in my pocket. Now, all through the book, there's a no to binary, right? There's an embracing of all sorts of levels and nuances and shades. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
This is easy for me. I just say, do you want to talk about that? And you say, yes, sure.
Well, I'm trained in theatre. We do yes, let's. We always say yes. I think I'm interested about when we use the word old and when we use the word young. So you might talk about an old wine, right, or an aged wine, and that's a good thing. But if you talk about an old person, then, as you say, then that's often or can have a more negative connotation in the Western society that we're in. But then in a Pacific culture or Te Ao Māori culture, like that has a more positive connotation often. Sometimes we see the positive in age and sometimes we don't. Yeah, we've got some hang-ups around it that are not very helpful, and I'm already feeling them at 51, so I can imagine that can get just a bit more difficult. Why do we always focus on the negative? I understand that, but I'm also trying to grow my fixation with positive things, and does that make sense?
Yes. It's about the stories we tell ourselves and how they stick in our minds and become true, and how to recognize that that's going on and that you can actually change it. You can read it a million times and think, oh, yeah, but to have it actually happen, you feel it in your whole body, really. Well, actually, I was doing it this year. First half of the year, I heard myself saying over and over again, how are you, Rachel? Oh, good, but I just got a little bit too much. I'm just a bit worried. I realised I was feeding my brain. Yeah, that's why I was giving this message that I was anxious and making myself anxious. And so I did actually at that point, not to say that I'm a reformed character, but I did at that point manage to completely turn that around, and that's not what I'm saying about this part of the year.
That's a great change, and I think especially with that word busy, like that's one of those words that can go both ways, can't it? Like, because often people say to me, oh, I know you're very busy, and it kind of has this negative energy around it, and also
you're too busy for me.
Yes, that's right. I am a person who likes and needs to be doing a lot of things. So yeah, changing that, and it's the words, but it's also, I think, the energy that we hold around those words.
Right.
Yeah.
Even my tone of voice changed, didn't I, when I was talking about that?
Well, and that's what I like.
That kind of drags you down, that voice. Yeah.
That's what I like about theatre is, sure, a playwright can write the words, but then they can be said to mean completely different things, and that's where I think, yeah, the words matter, but the energy around those stories matters, and the way we hold them, like you say. Let's go back to the binary. The spectrum, we need to be fully aware of that. That said, there is a need for the poles. You know, like we're not,
of course,
on an age level, like we're not all the same.
There's no spectrum without an end.
That's right.
Two ends.
Exactly, that's right. But it's just to know that there isn't a hard line.
Old and young are treated like mutually exclusive. And yet it's so weird because people assume they stop being young at 40 or they're going to be young till they die. And they're quite useful words, young and old. They actually mean something. I mean, you don't look at me and you don't go and ask my mother what daycare centre I go to. I'm not a young person.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I think, and the binary that I keep coming back to, I guess, is sort of night and day. There's no particular line between night and day. Deep night is very different to midday.
Then we've got gloaming and dusk, but there's no mistaking midnight for midday.
But it's just the hard lines that get us into trouble.
Yes, I see.
Yeah.
They say that somebody old is someone 15 years older than me.
Right. Well, that kind of makes sense.
It does, doesn't it? Really?
It's always relative to us. Like,
Always
we're the benchmark.
Relative. Always relative. That is absolutely true. The whole binary thing, it goes beyond that. It's winners and losers too. And I hate that when it applies to aging. We do want to age our way, age well, age slowly perhaps. But it sort of becomes a bit competitive like everything else. What about this aging successfully? That's outrageous, I think.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of when we were in prenatal class, like about to have your babies. Yeah. And I remember this I felt like, these kind of successful principles from business or whatever had been applied to the birth process. And I have this response in my body of just wanting to run the other way. I mean, sure, I care about what I eat, I care about all these things, but also there's a mystery to the way that the world works and the way that it unfolds, and I also like throwing myself into that river in a way and seeing what happens. Well, on one hand, I guess we get to define what successful is, right? Like, is it having some happiness or being around people that we love in our later years? Yeah, I think we need to redefine what successful is, and I just don't believe in getting into a frenzy about how to do that. Just feels like a lot of angst.
Yes, I worry that with so much emphasis on aging well, that some people will feel like failures because they're aging their way, and they might like McDonald's once a week or something. I'd hate that to be happening. I don't know whether it is, but I'm a bit aware of it myself.
The creative approach is to accept the reality that we are in and to find a way to work alongside it and with it and through it that is fun, clear, truthful, frame changing. There's a sense of transformation. I think that's very important in creativity. I accept that this label was put on me, but I'm going to call it this instead, or I'm in my body, I'm going to think of it as this. And I know there are things that happen that we can't control, all sorts of things, but also I think there's some kind of acceptance. This is where I am. Again, it's that creative thing. How do I make the best of where I am right now?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's wonderful if you can be conscious of that and not to feel helpless that this is just the way things are, life's just going to push me around. Something that I'm becoming aware of now is about receiving feedback. So as a writer, I know all about that, and how to give feedback is so important. And as an old person, I now need to be very open to feedback, like the day when one of my children will tell me, "Mum, your jersey's dirty down the front." What's your advice? How does your advice for creative people apply to older people when they're getting helpful advice from their children or their friends?
That's such a great question. I am aware that the experience is probably quite different when you're going through it. But I guess in a way, when any of us are sick or vulnerable, we're in that place where we need people to help us. I try to think of the other person quite a lot, like in that situation. Okay, that person is telling me that thing. Actually, they're doing that out of love. Like, I'm sure if someone is saying that to like, thank you. And so then I'll be like, oh, thank you. gosh, thank you for helping me with that. I remember, people correcting me on phrases that I could express more gracefully and a bit more kindly. And I think to me, clowning has really helped me with that practice, because the clown just fails. The clown just comes into the room and falls over, and then everyone else thinks, oh, there's someone more stupid than me, or I can relax. Whereas if there is someone very clever up there, then everyone, I think, it can drive that competitive frenzy. So I think, in a way, I love that status, the low status and the failure. I mean, I say that I struggle also, and I have an ego and da-da-da-da-da. So I'm not saying I've nailed it, but I do know that theory and that way of thinking helps me to forgive myself, which is very important, because I guess maybe that happens if someone says that to you. Maybe there's shame and embarrassment.
Yes.
That's right. And none of us really like to feel dependent on others, but maybe that's a narrative that we can change, because we all are very dependent on others. Yeah, so thinking about that the person is trying to do you a favour, even if they're being rude, they're still helping you, right? They're still giving you the information.
Well, I especially like that word help, because there's sort of a snarky version of that, or potentially snarky. Thank you for sharing that, dear.
Yes.
That's when you're not going to have a bar of it, but to say thank you for helping me with that, I think that's wonderful, actually. I think that's a jolly good fallback response to when it happens. I should write it down. Perhaps I'll carve it on the back of the sofa in case I forget. But I do like it, because of course it's always for help, and they are very sensitive, my kids.
I've said lots of things to myself about, when you're older, Jo, remember to really try to listen. I am thinking that I'm going to hold on to my views more rigidly, and really wanting to try to stay open to things that come along. But then at the same time, I think the flip side to that is trusting yourself and backing your own intuition about things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, if you compare it with feedback on a piece of writing, for example, there's 3 responses, and they come instantly. You know what you think. Sometimes you're wrong, but still, sometimes you think, no, they're miles off. There's no way I'm going to do that, or even think about it for a minute. And so I'll probably say thank you for sharing. And it's their point of view, but that's fine. Sometimes they say something and you immediately know they're right. You have thought it yourself. You knew that last verse was not necessary. And it's wonderful to have somebody tell you, and you can just go away and do it straight away.
Yes.
And the others are, I just want to think about that a bit more. Sometimes the feedback is just requires thinking about. Not talking about, actually. I don't really like it if we then all talk about it, because that's like dogs sort of fighting over a bone or something. All well meant and interesting intellectually, but as far as a writer, I just want to go away into a corner and turn up the light and have a little think and a scribble.
Yeah, and maybe even I find that overnight processing, you know what I mean? Totally. Sometimes the next morning you're like, oh, you're totally right. Or sometimes you're like, now I can articulate why I disagree with that, actually, because, like you say, in that middle section, sometimes you're like, there's something that's more complex here, but I can't quite nail what it is.
Yeah.
I like how you place them in those 3 categories. I think that's very true. And then I think back to the, something spilled on my jumper thing, often that would be true, right? Yeah. But then there's the reaction to that. I mean, that's what I feel with some folk that I know is there's the embarrassment around that, and the shame, all those things, and then there can come an anger with that. But I guess it's okay, isn't it?
It's something to get used to. Yeah, that's true.
We're all going to drop food on our jumpers. Yeah, and if we're lucky.
Sometimes, if they're actually going to say it, it's probably the 5th time they've seen it, and they know this is not just a random moment, and it does need some sort of attention. One of my role models is Doris Carnevale, who wrote this blog that I've repackaged, and she had that problem because she started eating in a recliner, and the angle was different, so she was spilling all the time. then her son, she was about 100 by then or nearly, so her son must have been old enough to be spilling himself, and he came in and told her he'd bought a bib. She was absolutely astonished to think that grown-ups could wear bibs. So she immediately went online and found a beautiful one with Velcro that she could do up with her bad fingers, and had sort of jewellery embroidered around the front or something.
I love that.
She's a role model, how to deal with feedback.
That's so beautiful, isn't it? To accept it and then kind of make it your own.
Yes. If you've got it, flaunt it.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's like two different people I know who both had worsening eye condition, and one of them kind of embraced it, got these like snazzy glasses or whatever, and like, look at these, and the other kind of like tried to steadfastly ignore it and avoid that. And I think ignoring also can be a helpful strategy sometimes. I try to do that with pain as much of the time as I can. And I love that word astonished that you said. Like, astonished has a lovely openness and curiosity to it.
Exciting, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow, I'm going to get this.
Yeah,
get a walking stick.
We've dealt with at least 3 pages in your book. It's a beautiful book. I love the scribbles.
Thank you, Rachel. It's been great to talk to you. I've had a great time, and it's nice to think about age. So thank you.